Thank you, Allison. And thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Hope everyone's enjoying this evening's program as much as we are. Next, I'm pleased to introduce our next and final speaker for today's webinar, Ms. Margie Wald, who will be presenting about the power of genre, engaging writers through content and language. Ms. Margie Wald teaches first-year composition, reading, grammar, and vocabulary courses for multilingual student writers. She directs the University of California, Berkeley Summer English Language Studies program and is managing editor for the Catisol Journal. She co-edited Teaching U.S. Educated Multilingual Student Writers and co-authored the textbook Exploring Options in Academic Writing, Effective Vocabulary and Grammar Use. Her research focuses on corpus-based materials development and academic literacy development among immigrant ESL students. So without further ado, please allow me to hand it over to Ms. Margie Wald.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And let's hope that you are seeing my slides. You all seeing my slides okay?
Yes.
Yes, fine.
Okay, perfect. Are you also seeing my speaker notes or just my slides? Just my slides, I hope.
Just your slides, yes.
Good.
Slides.
Hey, I did it right. Okay, excellent. Well, Helene is a hard act to follow. Beautiful slides. Everybody actually has had beautiful slides. And now you get the writing teacher who's going to be far too text heavy during this presentation, but bear with me. So I am honored to be presenting at this webinar and to be part of this illustrious panel. And I also want to thank everyone who had a hand in putting the webinar together. I want to talk today about how to teach writing, also with a heavy dose of reading and speaking, to engage students in authentic writing contexts with real topics of personal interest to students, writing to specific audiences. And so while I'm going to talk about some specific assignments and topics, like Helene, I want you to think about this as an approach. I want you to think about genre as an approach, and that the specifics that I'm going to give today are only to illustrate steps in the process of teaching genre. So you can choose content based on students' interests and levels. So here's an overview of what I hope to talk about today. So I want to start by why I think it's important to choose genre over other approaches to teaching writing. I want to talk about how to explain and introduce genre in class. And I want to then talk about explaining what a genre is in class, and then how to teach writing through genre and how to then focus on content and language. So why choose genre? So in the chat, I put a link to my handout, and I'd like you to, if you can, take a second. I'll put that link in there again. If you would take a second and download that, it might be a little bit easier for you to participate in the next part of the talk. So I'm going to have you look at two sets of guidelines, one for a 5-paragraph essay, which is commonly taught in writing classes, and one for a policy brief, which is a particular genre that I focused on in a research writing class. Again, this is going to be a pretty high-level assignment. You can think about other assignments that you might do. And I want you to think about, as you look at these guidelines, and you can put your answers in the chat, what differences stand out to you between the two sets of guidelines, and how well do following the guidelines for a 5-paragraph essay support students as they attempt to write sorry, I originally had two things there, to write the other item, but in the interest of time, I cut it to one. So here are some basic, very quick overview of how to construct a 5-paragraph essay. Introductory paragraph, first body paragraph, main idea, second body paragraph, second idea, third body paragraph, third idea, conclusion. And note that the final paragraph doesn't present anything new, it ties everything together. Okay, so there is your basic 5-paragraph essay. And I think you're all familiar with that, so I'm gonna spend some time on this one. Here is what is suggested as how one puts a policy brief together, right? So the summary, which is often in bullet points, then recommendations, introduction, right? Which, as you see, kind of talks about a lot of things, maybe more than we might have students talk about. Body has several options of how you might go about putting that together, policy implications and conclusions. And then also there are boxes and sidebars, case studies, tables, graphics, photographs. So in the chat, tell me, what do you think how do these kind of differ between, how does this differ from how you would put a 5-paragraph essay together? So I'm going to go back to that 5-paragraph essay. And how well do you think writing a 5-paragraph essay will in fact prepare students to handle this assignment? Bullet points, I know, students love them or hate them, right? The thing that I forgot also in the in addition part is there are lots of headers in policy briefs, right? Anybody else think about how that? I just want you to take a few minutes to think about that. So again, here's your 5-paragraph essay, and here's your policy brief. Give everybody a minute. So in the interest of time, I can talk about how this is really confusing for students at times. One, they have to decide kind of, are they going to follow this kind of 5-paragraph essay kind of approach? Or are they going to bring together these different modes, right? They do both have an intro and a conclusion, right? But I think that there are a lot of things in here, a lot of options for them to choose, and it's much more complex and requires a lot of different modes. And that is not what students are accustomed to in writing a 5-paragraph essay. So what I'm hoping in this discussion today is to talk to you a little bit about how to change up the way that we're teaching writing in order to prepare students. Right? So let me go to our next thing. So one issue with a 5-paragraph essay is that it's kind of context free. Students are writing in a vacuum, right? Write about, types of dreams, or write about, I don't know, whatever. But they're not really, there's not really a clear sense of purpose and a clear audience. But writing, even personal writing, is situated. It's driven by expectations of arrangement, content, length, formatting, language and style, and more. And so we need to help students understand how to analyze for all of those things. Okay. In addition, whoops, sorry, I keep messing up my forwarding here. There are also the issues surrounding transfer. So writing research has shown us that student writers struggle to transfer the specifics that they've learned in a writing class to later writing tasks in school, out of school. It doesn't matter. Even if that writing that they do is very similar to the writing that they did in their writing classes, students just aren't making that transfer. And if the writing genre and the expectations, like that policy brief, are very different from what they're used to, like a 5-paragraph essay, then transfer is negligible. So it means we're spending a lot of time, and while writing might help them improve their grammar and vocabulary, in terms of the writing techniques that you're teaching, there's not a lot of transfer. And then if we put this transfer at the center of the course, and if we give students strategies for figuring out how different writing contexts be, and how different the audience might be, and how different their expectations might be across those contexts, then we're giving students strategies for navigating the different writing that they'll need to do in the future. And also, I don't think I need to say much about interest and engagement, as every single other panelist has already talked about it. But there's a lot of research on motivation and engagement and language learning, and writing a 5-paragraph essay about, let's say, what characteristics make for a good friend. I mean, seriously, maybe I care about that, but chances are people are just doing it because you're asking them to do it. So think about all the things that other people have said about engagement today. So the first thing that you want to do in class and maybe for yourself is to think about, like, what is a genre? How do we define genre? Right. So one thing you might do is do a little pragmatics, right? So here's your situation. You're on the street and you've accidentally stepped on someone's toes. So in the chat, tell me which number here would be an appropriate apology, right? Which do you think would be appropriate? And there's more than one, right? Which of these do you think would be an appropriate apology? Okay, good. You know, granted, it's going to depend a little bit on the context, right? Sorry if you're in a place where people are knocking into each other all the time, you just, oh, sorry, or excuse me, right? But I'm sorry, are you all right? Might be nicer if you've really stepped on their toes, like seriously, right? I'm sorry you hurt your foot is my favorite. That's inappropriate, right? It just doesn't, right? How absolutely careless of me, may I buy you a new pair of shoes? Well, you know, seriously. And please do forgive my inexcusable lack of consideration. Way too formal unless it's like the queen or something, right? So, okay. So you all can see that some things fit in the genre of an apology in this situation and some don't, right? Some are too formal or too informal or just inappropriate. Okay, so now the other way that I sometimes define genre is to ask, we're going to define a hamburger. And I want you to take a second to look at the next examples, and these are on the handout as well, and let me know which of these do you think fits the genre of a hamburger, right? Okay, so there are 10 examples, right? All right, I'm going to talk you through some of them because they're a little bit small, right? So the first one that I showed was kind of the standard hamburger, right? Boom. Yes, there are pickles, so that makes it a little special. Here, cheeseburger, no problem, still fits the hamburger genre. Here's one that has, I think that's like mushrooms and onions on top. That's okay. Here's a California burger because I'm from California with avocado and all that. Does that fit? What do you think? Here are a bunch of sliders. Those are the small ones, right? Do they fit the genre of hamburger? You can go ahead and put in the chat if you think, when I get to one that you don't think fits, go ahead. Yes, Lynn, I'm from Pittsburgh and I know that Pittsburgh has fries inside the burger. So for me, that fits, right? Okay. This number 5 is turkey. So would turkey fit the hamburger category, right? Here's a patty with some melted cheese on an English muffin. Is an English muffin okay? Right? Is that still a burger? Here's from Whataburger here in California. They have this this style where they wrap it in lettuce for the people watching their carbs. Does that count? This is an Impossible Burger, so that has plant-based material. And then number 5 is Hamburger Helper's Hamburger Skillet, right? So not the wrap, no bread, does not qualify. Okay, so a lot of people are going to have fights about this, and we had fights, and then we decided that there's like a genre of burger, and then there's a genre of hamburger, right? But you can see that while there are ones that definitely don't fit your definition of genre, and we all in the end kind of agree, there's usually bread, so there's some question about number 8, right? This one, the kind of bread doesn't always matter to people. No turkey for a hamburger, right? Exactly, even though it doesn't have any ham in it, whatever. But nobody thinks 10 fits, even though it's got similar ingredients. It's just not part of it. So we do this to show that we're not going to give them a template like this is how you do it. Genre has a lot, every genre has a lot of variation within it. But there are certain characteristics that we agree on and certain characteristics that we say are not part of the game, right? So that's what a genre is. So what's the process of teaching genre? Well, here's a bit of an overview, and it's a little bit different from what we often talk about with process writing, although there are some overlaps. For my classes, because they're usually reading into writing classes, but yours may not be, but we do want to generally gather some background information on whatever topics students are writing about. They want to maybe generate some initial content, doesn't have to be in any kind of format, but maybe in maybe outline, maybe bullet point, maybe mind map, something like that. But here's where it's a little bit different. Before they start writing, we really do a lot of investigating of the genre. We look at guidelines, we look at models, we analyze those guidelines and models for the specific content and the specific language and the specific arrangement, the rhetorical moves, the organization of the piece and what's happening in each section, right? That happens earlier in the process. And so I know there was a question earlier about ESP, English for Specific Purposes. This is actually a really good approach for those classes. We also analyze the audience, right? We look at who exactly we're writing for, right? If I'm writing for, you know, there's an old assignment in writing classes, you talk about a car accident that you had, and you write about it to your insurance agent, you write about it, to your parents, and you write about it to your friend. And you're going to make very different choices. And you're going to make those choices based on what you think is going to be persuasive to that audience. And so we talk about the audience and what's going to be persuasive. Then we have to go back and gather maybe some more information, because in doing this investigation, we realize that there are more things that we need, right? And then we redraft, or we do an actual draft based on this analysis. And then we might go through a process of drafting and redrafting. And so that's the overall, right? So I'm going to talk today about op-eds and policy briefs, as these are what I did in my last research class. But you can ask students to create anything. I just talked to a friend who did a 4-page brochure for people traveling to the student's hometown. That you can create a new protein or cereal bar and design a box for it, because believe it or not, the box that cereal bars come in, that's a kind of genre. And we did that in a business English class. Obviously a restaurant review, a horror story, an email asking a professor for a letter of recommendation, a blog post comparing 2 ways to travel to a particular tourist destination, or, oh, I don't know, a digital story, right? There's probably in that storyboarding process that Deborah talked about, there are probably some expectations for how things work. I know when I did my first digital story, I talked way too much and didn't let the images be more at the center, right? So there are expectations and requirements for how to do a digital story. So in other words, you give an audience and a purpose. So let's look specifically at the section investigating the genre. So the first thing that we do is I give students a chart like this that helps them take a look at what specifically they want to look at in the models that I'm going to give them. Text type and genre, right? Location, setting, or digital space, the overall layout, the rhetorical arrangement and moves. This is, again, the order and type of information, the purpose in each section, what the author's trying to do in each section, how long it is, who's the audience, their expectations, what kind of style or register formality do we want to use, what are some key grammatical features, some lexical or vocabulary features, maybe some lexico-grammatical features, right? So I give them this chart, and we use this again and again and again. We might use it to look at one piece, we might use it to compare pieces, we might use it to compare different genres, right? Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, this is really small, so you're gonna have to kind of trust me on this. It's also on the handout. I kind of wanted to have all 3 of them there, and that makes it a little small on the slide. But I give students 3, well, or 6 or whatever, but I come up with a bunch of examples. And so I'm going to show you 3 of them here just quickly. This is seeded miso sweet potato bread, savory cornmeal chia waffles with spicy maple syrup, and buckwheat, almond, and coconut granola. So for those of you who cook or eat, right, already you're beginning to see like the types of ingredients are telling you a little bit about the audience. And then underneath, if you can read it, it talks about the specific ingredients in each item, in each recipe, and their kind of health qualities, right? And they've got 3 of them here, and it's in a magazine called Real Simple. Right? Okay, the next one, this is my favorite. This is Cook's Illustrated, which I do subscribe to, and this is how to make profiteroles at home. I don't know why you would ever do this. It looks very complicated, but here we have this whole section here in which they were testing it and figuring things out and finding the best way to do things and at exactly what heat, etc. Then we've got the ingredients here. We've got a long description here, and then we've got this step-by-step, right? And then finally, our last one is what I would lovingly refer to as my grandmother's recipe, if I could ever get her to even write a recipe down, which is buttermilk biscuits. What's that? Baking powder, but I had to think about that one. Shortening the size of an egg. I love that. And then bake in a hot oven. How hot? I don't know. Right. But you can see that I don't think that she wrote this for me. I mean, she might have, but it's really not written for, it's kind of almost written for herself. Right. Okay. So again, we have these three, and you can see that there's quite a bit of difference. And so in asking students to look at these items within those three recipes, we can see that certain things are required, but again, there's a lot of variation. Right? And then of course, if you wanted them to do a recipe for a specific audience, you could have them do that. It goes well with, there's been a lot of food talk today. So, so if you want to get your feet wet with genre, one thing I suggest is the op-ed. And I suggest this, I know that some of you are using even lower levels, and so you may want to do things like a blog post or something shorter. The travel brochure is nice because it has a lot of photos and just a little bit of writing in there. But and there are lots too. It's fun to look at models of travel brochures. But to get your feet wet with the op-ed, so the reason I say this is it looks a lot like a 5-paragraph essay. It is pretty standard to start with a really strong kind of pathetic appeal at the beginning to grab your students' attention, like the hook that we're used to. And then there usually is a statement of the argument. It's usually fairly explicit. It's also really direct, which is helpful for students who are kind of getting used to this idea of genre. And then the argument usually has, believe it or not, 3 points. It is pretty standard, right? But the third point is usually a little bit bigger. It looks at historical context, things like that. And then there's the to be sure paragraph, which is sort of like the refutation paragraph that we are used to. And then the conclusion that leads back to the hook. So it looks very much like a 5-paragraph essay. But the big difference is that audience is really what drives an op-ed. And that's not true of a 5-paragraph essay. If I'm writing op-eds to teachers, if I'm writing one, let's say to teachers about some teaching thing, or to policymakers, or to a voting audience in the state of California, my choice of evidence will differ. My reasons may differ as well, depending on the shared values that I have with that audience. And certainly the ways in which I talk about the reasons will differ given my audience's background knowledge. So we often talk about these things when we talk about 5-paragraph essays, but then there's no audience, so they can't do it. The other nice thing about op-eds is that sentence structure should be relatively short and language accessible. So it's useful for students who are learning language, right? Okay. Here are some of the research topics that students chose in my fall 2020 research writing class. Now, these are pretty high level, but this was a high level class. It also was a research class, and our topic was, as you can kind of tell, healthcare access and diversity. And we were in the middle of COVID, and we were in the middle of Black Lives Matter here in the US. And we were, right, so there were a lot of things that the students were very interested in, excited about. They were in the news, they were following news stories, they were doing intensive and extensive reading, right? And they found it really exciting to talk about these topics, right? Later, students wrote policy briefs, right, about the same topic. So by writing to other students, to future doctors, to insurance companies. In fact, one person was writing directly to insurance companies, or to potential voters in California. The students were able to talk about a topic of interest related to our course theme to this real audience. And several students actually submitted their op-eds to be published, and 2 students actually got published. So good for them. right? So here's that policy brief again, right? And again, it's high level, but I just want to show you, I know I'm about out of time, so I'm going to go through this fast, but this is an important step in the genre process, right? I give students a set of samples. Sometimes there are nice sites that have a bunch of them, right? Sometimes that's not necessarily the case, but I'll start with one that we all look at together. So here's one that we all looked at together, right? On strengthening mentoring opportunities for students at risk. This was in an education class, right? And we looked at this and we saw all the bullet points and the headers and everything else. But then I gave them a bunch of others that really looked a little bit different, right? There was also this nice handout here, and I'll make these slides available, that gives a nice overview of how to put policy briefs together. And it also gave lots of samples and annotated them and did a lot of things. But you may not be able to get all of that that easily. So of course you can annotate your own. So if we go to one of the samples here, and I just want to check, can you all see that sample, Overcoming Water Scarcity? I hope so, because I can't see it. But okay, so we go through and we analyze, we look at the different sections, right? Here's an overview of the argument. Here's something that establishes the problem, right? Here's something that looks at feasibility issues and constraints, and then recommendations to overcome those constraints, right? So we look at how things are put together. We look at lots of different samples so they can see that they have options, but it's always based on some sort of problem and recommendations. So we look at what's similar, we look at what's different. And you can do that with any sample, annotating those. And then of course you can also annotate the language. Whoops, that went to the wrong thing. Sorry, uh-oh, do I have that? Oh, well, it's really important, but I'll go through, it's okay. Hold on. I'll tell you what we looked for in this annotated sample. This is the old one, but you'll see within the very beginning here, we have overcoming, and we have generates, right? We have lots of verbs in here that talk about cause and effect. And so I went through with one color and I highlighted, trust me, you just can't see it because I put the wrong link in, apologies. We contributing to, affected by, etc. So we looked at all of those. We looked at the use of headers. We looked at how there was a lot of information that was being put, kind of shoved in, right? A lot of information being packed in there. So we looked at, there are several places where there are the use of dashes, like in this last paragraph, including buckets, watering cans, and treadle pipe. So we go through and we highlight all that language because that gives us something that we can talk about in class as language assignments, right? Lots of vocabulary, lots of grammar that we can talk about together. And then, well, we're out of time, so we're not going to brainstorm genre assignments, but I just wanted to thank you for listening to me go through this rather quickly. And I'm happy to talk more about how to work with these readings and analyze the genre in order to provide support for your students. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Margie Wald. Very insightful. And we've got 2 questions so far. One question asks about the 5-paragraph essay. Is it considered a genre?
There's a lot of debate about that topic. And I think the answer is no. The answer that most people have come to is that the 5-paragraph essay, because it lacks true audience and purpose, and because it's a template, but it's not a genre. There are also so many kind of different ways that you can put a 5-paragraph essay together that if it's content and context free, or you can put anything in there, then it's really not considered a genre, right? A lot of people want it to be a genre. A lot of people will say, well, if I have to teach them a genre, then I may as well teach them the 5-paragraph essay as a genre. But if you go back to that slide, if we go back to the slide that talks about what you're looking for in a genre. Let me see if I can pull that up really quickly. And you ask students to look through a 5-paragraph essay and tell me, forget about this one. Well, it's like impossible to kind of answer these questions. You're not going to find a whole lot of things that are the same, right? Except for maybe the rhetorical arrangement and the length. But I'm not even sure that the moves are the same. The purpose of each paragraph is, there's not enough similarity for to call that a genre.
Okay, would you consider the 5-paragraph essay helpful for beginning writing teachers?
No. Okay, yes and no. I mean, no, in that I think it's easier. It's easier for students. It's easier for teachers, but I don't know that it is better. Easier as much as I want some things to be easy. I know, Joe, you said that we give them readings that are too hard. I don't want you to give them the writings that are too hard. You don't need to do a policy brief, but I think that approach of the 5-paragraph essay does two things. One, it doesn't allow for that transfer, and people talk about it as a scaffold that we should break down, but nobody ever breaks it down. So I don't think it prepares students for the kinds of writing that they need to do outside of class or inside of class as they move forward. And I think that we just rely on it. And I also think that what is it? I can't remember who said this, but it was referred to as the 5-paragraph essay as author evacuated. Like the author is irrelevant in the creation of the 5, I mean, maybe they're talking, the person is talking about a particular position, but overall, there's no exigency for writing a 5-paragraph essay. There's no reason, there's no reason that they could get excited about writing that in most cases.
Farhad Hama has a question to ask, but the preference is to ask the question directly to you. So Farhad.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Actually, I have a question regarding the language and the content. As we know, when we teach writing, there should be a match between the language and the content. But sometimes we as EFL teachers face a great problem with our EFL learners. When they start writing, we cannot see a match between the language and the content. They know about topics, but they cannot write whatever they want. For example, they cannot write about different genres. They cannot write about different topics. They have lack of knowledge sometimes, and they have lack of, let me say, vocabulary knowledge. They have grammatical problems. They cannot, let me say, use proper lexical phrases or, let me say, vocabularies when they start writing. How can we, let me say, sort out this problem?
Well, obviously,
especially for university students. I'm
Yeah,
talking
I
about
I
the university students, in English department.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I understand. And I think that modeling is key. So in doing this analysis of the genre, what you're allowing students to do is you're using readings as these models. And so it not only provides them, and I'm sorry, I'm still looking for that other, the messed up link that I put in there. But what we're doing is we're giving students not just an arrangement to look at, but we're also giving them a lot of language and a lot of grammar. And so choosing your models for your level is really appropriate. So if you're asking them to do maybe a blog post on comparing, I mean, the thing I was thinking about was, how do you get to a tourist destination? Should I take a train? Should I drive? Should I take the bus? Whatever. I mean, I know that doesn't sound terribly exigent, but I do it. I look it up all the time. When I'm going somewhere and I want to figure out, like, when I'm going from here to here, should I take the bus, or I'm a public transportation user. Should I drive? Should I take the bus? Should I take the subway? And I'll get these long answers on like Expedia or on TripAdvisor or elsewhere, comparing like, well, at this time you want to do this, and at this time you want to do that. And so you can look at all of those, look at the language that's being used. What are, is it about directions? Is it about time? Is it about distance? Is it whatever the language is? They borrow that language. And it's not, it's not plagiarism to borrow language, right? From, yes, if they take a whole sentence, sure, but how are they supposed to develop their vocabulary skills if they're not borrowing from things that they read? That's what Joe said was one of the best ways to improve your vocabulary, right? So you give them these models and you really focus in on like we did a lot of work on cause and effect, reason and result for doing those policy briefs, because it was all about problems and solutions, and that's all about reasons and results, right? So we pulled out all the vocabulary that talked about that. Now, granted, that's at a much higher level, but you think about models that are at the right level for what you're trying to teach, and you think about a genre that's going to work for that level. And then they actually get to use that language. And so not only do they get to read it and have it become part of their receptive vocabulary, but then you ask them to use X number of words in the thing that they're trying to write. Will it be ugly in the first drafts? Of course it will, right? The mistakes will be made, right? And then you go back and you look at what you need to know about a word to use it correctly. And then you talk about, okay, you can do all this error analysis work in class based on what people have written, right? Yes, the academic phrase book is really nice, right? And another thing is, right, to look at, and you can give them the information in a lot of ways. I mean, they can do readings, but you can also find a lot of problem solution videos, on things. So, and travel videos and other things. So maybe there's a way to start with something oral, if that's what students connect with the subtitles on, where you're writing down the words that look good, or giving them the transcript and having them highlight things, and then have them try to use that in their own writing. And granted, it's a learning process. It's not going to be happening overnight, but it can work, right? I work with a lot of community college instructors and are friends with a lot of community and college instructors who have been doing a lot of blog posts, emails, things like that, things that are smaller, simpler, clear moves from, here's how you start your letter asking for something from a professor. You always say something nice about the class that you were in and the work that you do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So, so it doesn't have to be a policy brief. I only gave you that because that was the last thing I did. Other questions?
Yes, Margie, one more.
I talked a lot there.
It's fine. It's fine. What if we have to use a textbook that focuses on the modes? For example, comparison, cause, effect.
Right. There's a really good website, which I'll put. My references are coming, and I'll put that in there. Nigel Kaplan, who's written a lot about genre, has a blog in which he talks about, what are some options for when you have to write a cause effect essay. A policy brief would be one of them, but an op-ed would actually be one of them. But what about when you have to do a comparison, like that example of the traveling to a destination?
Mm-hmm.
And right, all of those things can become, as long as you take the idea of cause effect or the idea of comparison and you give it a real audience and a real context and a real purpose, then that's the first step. And you have models that you can look at. What you're going to find, though, is that the modes tend to be put together. So we'll do a little bit of definition, and then we'll do a little bit of description, and then we'll do some causes, and then we'll talk about effects, and we might talk about more causes and more. So, and we may be comparing causes. Right, so the modes get mixed together. But if you're starting at a lower level and you want to keep it simpler, there are ways that you can, and I'll give you Nigel's link in my link on my references, so that you can see some ways that can happen. And again, I will just share this again so that you can see. Hold on one second, and I'll put up my place where all the slides and all the references will eventually be posted, right? There's my, there's the site. Okay.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we have time for one last question. I can see a comment, or I thought I saw a comment and a question here. Yes, it says, I'm teaching the writing course to middle school kids now, and we are focusing on personal narratives. Do you
Mhm.
give students a specific audience for types of writing like this?
Well, I would. I think it's I think it's a good idea to do that, because the way in which, I mean, it depends. There is some writing that is writer focused, and it is for the writer. So it depends on if you're having them write this personal narrative for them to see themselves better, like some of the things that Deborah was talking about for digital storytelling. But really, I think that most personal narratives, what makes a personal narrative strong is it has a point. And it has a point that it may not be a thesis that is delivered explicitly. It may very well be an implicit thesis, but there is a point, and you make choices based on what's going to help make that point the best to a particular audience. And so for me, I do think about audience all the time. Some people really question my doing that, but I think if we're doing this to help prepare students for writing in the workplace or writing at school, I think it's really important for them to think about that.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Ms. Margie Wald. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here today. I will now hand this over to Sandy. Sandy, are you here?
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
Sorry, my boys were working on a project that was quite noisy. All right, so we have come to the end of this amazing webinar, and I wanted to first of all thank all of our speakers today for coming and giving us a wealth of knowledge. Really, you've got me thinking, and I'm sure that you've got others thinking as well, what we can do with this information. And I wanted to just remind you that, actually let you know that the TEFL Kuwait board is now asking for positions that are both appointed and elected, because we did not get all of the elected members at large and for the nominating committee. So we will be holding elections again. We are waiting now for the board to meet, but it's probably going to be somewhere this summer or the end of the summer. For elected positions, we need 5 members of the nominating committee and 1 more member at large. And we are also opening up applications for appointed positions. We need a conference chair-elect, a webmaster, newsletter editor, and media and PR manager. So please contact us if you are interested in any of these. Our email is just at info@teflkuwait.com. Then we also wanted to tell you about our next event, which, Rana, go ahead and change that. Yes, so we have so far 1 speaker that we will have in July. That's Dr. Meng Tian. And she's a senior lecturer at the Department of Education, an associate professor in educational leadership, management and governance, and the co-director of the Center for Research and Education in Asia. And we're really looking forward to her speech, her presentation, and we may end up getting another speaker. We're trying to, but right now, so far, they just are not matching up. Anyway, I also would like to thank you all for coming, and I would like to thank Algonquin College, which is one of our sponsors. And they are helping us with this professional Zoom account, and they are definitely they're helping us out. If you have any questions, you please feel free to ask. Yes, there you go. You can email us, or you can see us on our Facebook page, and we also have an Instagram account. Thank you. I'm so glad that the technology was solid today, Joe. It's definitely, this is the Algonquin College. Yes, Rana?
Can somebody share the link for certificates? Maybe some people were not able to get the certificates. So there's a link.
Yes. Yes, let me do that.
Yeah, so we'll share the certificate link. Please download your certificate if you have not been able to. And please be patient if you're not able to do it tonight, because you will definitely be able to do it tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Wonderful. All right, that brings us to the end of our show today. And I'm going to hand it back to you, Rana, President.
Thank you so much, Sandy. And actually, before we close, I would like to thank all our speakers, all our guests, especially Joe. We have Helene, we have Margie here, and we also have
Harry.
Deborah. I think there is Deborah here. I can't see her here. And Dr. Harry Kucha, who already left. We're really grateful to you for your time. I mean, especially for staying so long with us, because I know, I mean, it's a Saturday, but you know, you all have your time with your families, and thank you so much for supporting us. And we look forward to having you again with us. And actually, Margie, I would really like to have another session with you on purpose-based linguistics. I mean, that's such an interesting topic, and we would definitely like to have you again. And all of you, actually, I mean, whichever way you can support us. I think you're all members on our Facebook page. So you will still you will be able to support us as long as you can see us, watch us from there. Alison, would you like to say something? Like to add?
Yes, I would like to thank everyone for joining us. Our speakers were amazing, as I said when Dr. Helene spoke, TKO, and that stands for total knockout. So here we are, TEFL Kuwait. We're here to serve you. We're here to engage you.
Bye. And not only this, we really want you to volunteer. That's so important. We want people to work with us. I mean, we alone cannot do this. We cannot achieve this. So we will look forward to your applications for all those positions. Please join us.
Yes, and Rana, could you just review one more time? How should anyone who's interested in applying for one of our positions,
yes.
or seeking an appointed position, how would they go about that? They need to drop us an email?
Yes, email, yes. This is info@teflkuwait.com. And actually, we will be sending out, the most important thing is join us as a member, because we will be sending out regular information on the appointed or the elected positions, available positions, or any kind of reminders, or maybe information on our upcoming events. So please join us, that's so important. And join our Facebook page. You can visit our website, which is www.teflkuwait.com. Sandy, can you also text that website address in the chat box, the website where people can go and access a membership and other things? You want me to go back to the positions which are available? Sorry, did I close it? Let me just quickly show the positions which are there. These are the positions. Okay, these are the positions, but we will be sending out email to you so you would know. Definitely. And thank you so much for joining us. And we really know it's been a long day and a long evening, actually. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Rana, do we have a
Thank
date?
you,
for
Rana,
the-
Allison, and Sandra. It is Sandy. Sorry, wonderful. I think this was your first run, right? And you all did a very good job. It was
Thank you,
really
Molly.
good.
Thank you,
you.
Molly.
Thank
Great to
you.
have you, Molly.
Thank you so much.
Rana, do we have a date on the,
No, right now, no, but definitely we will announce the date on the Facebook page, on the website, and of course we will send out an email. That's the most important thing. That's why it's important to join us as a member, because you will receive regular emails from Sandy. Sandy, our membership chair, she is going to send.
and yes, membership is currently free. So
Oh, yeah,
get
the most
in while the
important
getting is good.
Hmm,
Yes,
most important.
totally free of charge.
Yes. So we look forward to you joining us very soon. Have a wonderful evening, a wonderful day for those who are in North America or other parts of the world. Have a great day and a great weekend, of course. Your weekend is just starting. Ours is finishing because tomorrow we go back to work, Sunday.
Yep. Tomorrow grades are
Thank
due
you,
first thing in the
everyone.
morning.
Thanks, everybody.
To everyone.
Good night. Could
Good
we
night,
get
good afternoon.
could we get the board members to stick around for a
Yes,
minute
yes,
for a photograph?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Margie. Thank you so much, my dear. And Elaine, and I think Joe has already left. And we look forward to you joining us again for maybe more sessions.
I really enjoyed this, and it was so great to hear from other people and to hear what's going on in other contexts. It's always rewarding.
And that's a great idea, Margie. I'm going to save this chat and I'll share it with actually all of you. So we, you know, there are such amazing ideas, such wonderful ideas in those chat box. Any chat ideas are, I mean, I was not able to track all of them. I would definitely like to have a look at them later.
I've actually pulled out all of the links and the everything that everybody was sending. So,
That's
and I have it in a
fantastic.
document.
We
That's
yes, we
great.
can share it actually on the Facebook page also for a lot of people who might like to, you know, visit this information speaker wise.
And Rana, I know that there's a big movement now in science to talk about the use of stories, maybe not personal narratives, but the use of stories to get people to understand scientific concepts more. And so I see the use of stories much more in the discussion of writing in the sciences, and how the use of stories, you know, it's like they talk about it for earthquakes here in the Bay Area. You can talk about earthquakes, you can give numbers, you can do all the science, you can do the da-da-da. But when somebody starts telling a story about their experience with an earthquake, it has such a different rhetorical power, right?
Definitely.
It really does. I'm
And-
from the Sacramento area, Margie, so
You know what I'm
I
saying?
understand.
And there is a push to get scientists to tell more stories, one, because they're useful, but two, because then they're accessible. A lot of scientists, when they talk, they're not terribly accessible.
True.
No comment.
But the use of genre and corpus in ESP is just there are endless ways
I
that you
know,
can do that.
exactly.
And multimodal things, even if it's not a digital story. Yeah.
Maybe we will have the next session on corpus-based linguistics. I mean, I really look forward to Margie. I mean, you gave us two topics and it was so difficult for us to decide which one, you know? So this is something I really want you to make a presentation again, inshallah, very soon.
Thank you. Thank you. The genre is a new one for me, so I'm still getting my feet wet myself. So it was fun to try to put everything together. Yeah.
Well, it's very interesting.
I know.
Yeah.
And I
very
really want to
interesting.
learn more about those 8 steps to because I think we're all going to be doing more online teaching, even those of us in contexts where we have more access to vaccines. We're still, going to be online quite a bit. And I think that it's really interesting to see what kind of permanent changes will happen, even if we go back to the possibility